Well, Richard, 2022. I
Here we
can't
are
believe it.
again in
Here we are
2022.
again.
Hello, Mr. Huxtable. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Knight. I'm very well. Did you have a good break?
All good, all good. As we know, your good self. Were you lounging back with your smoking jacket on, sipping brandy in front of the roaring fire?
Well, a couple of things right there. I did have my smoking jacket on.
Good,
I
good.
was sat back. No roaring fire because you live in too modern a house, and no brandy. Of course, I was sampling
You know,
fine cider.
I've got visions of you holding it in one of these big bald, like brandy glasses, just swilling it around.
Well, I was doing that to warm the apples and so on. But what about yourself? Smoking jacket, brandy,
Of
fire.
course, absolutely partying all the time. In bed by 9, just relaxing, chilling. Yeah, all good, all good. And I hope all of our listeners and viewers out there have had a similarly marvelous break over Christmas and are raring to go in 2022. And that's what we're sort of beginning to talk about today, isn't it, my
We are.
learned colleague?
Well, we are, because we've had a little break, haven't we? You haven't heard much of us for a month or so, but maybe a bit longer, a couple of months. And that was, I guess, just to keep our learned listeners up to date, because we've been busy away working on a project in Insight 6. We've been working on our professional services client journey white paper. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that today and the impact that's had, because what's clear, I think, Rich, is that 2021 for many businesses was a year of reconstruction post-pandemic. It was a year of still not really sure how things were going to go. Obviously, we went into Christmas, didn't we, with Omicron, and that seems now hopefully to be certainly not over, but certainly less destructive as the previous variants. So I think businesses have had a pretty tough time into the back end of the year, and certainly some of this data shows us that lots of businesses, 256 we looked at, weren't really set up to look after their clients at the inquiry stage of the client journey. But and I think that's important to share that, because if you're getting ready and you're major plans for 2022, I guess the question we want to pose to our listeners today is that are you really ready, and do you have all the apparatus in place? Because we're back to working from home again. We know the challenges that gives businesses when they're trying to interact with colleagues. But so, Rich, tell us a bit about this amazing bit of market research we've done.
So yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that we looked at over 250 professional services firms across the UK, and actually these were spread across various sectors of professional services, if you like. And we looked at accountancy, insurance and finance, legal, and the property sector as well. So that all came under the umbrella of professional services, because we wanted to have a good look across this whole area. Because previously we have, as some of our listeners may know, we have done or looked at the interaction specifically around the legal sector. We thought, well, actually, how does that compare across the whole of professional services? So we looked at over 250 firms doing that. We had over 500 inquiries going into firms. Now, what does an inquiry look like? Well, actually, we did that across different mediums. The main one being the phone inquiry. So we had our researcher team across the UK pick up the telephones to these various firms and inquire about their services. And these were based on a number of different scenarios dependent on the sector. We also asked our researchers, different researchers, to look through the website interaction. So how could they make an inquiry through the website? And also via any chat functions that were available. How many of those organizations had a chat function? And when an inquiry was made via that side of things, how great was the experience? So we were really looking for the response around how great did you find that initial inquiry? We were looking at certain aspects around the idea of the speed at which response came, the questioning skills and the interest shown by the people who were interacting with you, And then also, quite importantly, what sort of follow-up was received as well from those inquiries. So that's what we looked at, and we provided all that data in what we would call our customer experience review reports. And then we've crunched all these numbers, as Ryan said, over the last couple of months. And actually, at the back end of last year, the report was actually published. Now, some of you, if you're listening or are on LinkedIn, may have seen that we have been talking about it already, and it has been out there. But we thought we'd provide you with a little bit of insight. So, what were the key figures that sort of came out of that from our report, Ryan, just as a highlight for the listeners?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting you mentioned the numbers, and I think great explanation, by the way, Richard. You've read it clearly. Yeah, over a pint of cider, I hope. But all joking aside, one of the things we set out to achieve with this was to, as Richard said, to give a really balanced view across the sector, to really dig under the skin of how businesses were recovering from the initial stages of the pandemic. And what's really interesting when you look at the data in detail is how the different sectors compared. Now, overall, in terms of our mystery shopping reports, the mystery shopping reports manage different stages of those initial inquiries, as Rich said. And in truth, the average scores, if we're really honest, in terms of overall positive satisfaction between our highly trained research team, we had about 300 researchers involved in this work, and did the firms deliver a great client experience? Only 42% overall of those reports were positive. So that gave us a massive opportunity for these businesses to kind of look in detail into where they fell over, and in truth, where they fell over was some basic stuff like answering the phone, responding to the web email that had gone in, giving the right sort of information on their live chat. So some really basic stuff that customers quite simply expect businesses to have right. So we looked at those elements in terms of the overall positive interaction. We also asked our researchers to make a judgment call, and that was a really simple judgment call. That was based on your experience at inquiry, trying to get in contact with these businesses. Would you recommend other clients, other customers, get involved and contact these businesses for a service? And we did that on what's called on a Net Promoter Scale. And for those of you, I'm sure many of you will know what Net Promoter is. So excuse me for teaching proverbial granny to suck those proverbial eggs, but I'm just going to give you a quick resume. So basically, you score, I'm sure you've done these surveys yourself, you score on a scale of 0 to 10 on the experience you've had, 10 being superb, excellent, couldn't be better, 0 being pretty awful, I'd never use them again. And if you score a business 9 or 10, you're not what's known as an advocate. If you score a 7 or an 8, you are indifferent, you're a little bit agnostic to it, it's okay, it's a bit beige. If you score 6 or below, you're detracting, you wouldn't recommend the business. Now, in statistical data, if you keep all of that sort of those agnostic data in the middle, 7 and 8, it tends to smooth the average out, so it looks okay. So what Net Promoter does is it takes the percentage of people that scored you a 9 or a 10, the percentage of people that scored you 6 or below, and you minus 1 percentage from the other to give you a plus or minus score up to 100. So let's keep the math simple. If 20% scored you a 9 or 10, and 10% scored you a 6 or below, and the other 70% scored you an 8 or 9, you take the 20 and the 10, minus the 20 from the 10 gives you a plus 10 Net Promoter Score. Okay, so that's how it works. So Rich, tell us, what did the Net Promoter Scores look like for the various different sectors?
Well, interestingly, it's one of the key things here, because this Net Promoter Score is all about recommendation. So the best part of marketing any organization is your customers going to other people and saying, these guys are brilliant, go and use them. Because guess what? Chances are people are going to, no matter whether they've used it before or they haven't, as a new client. If they feel that's really strongly, then it's a key part. Unfortunately, what we found is that across the whole of professional services sector, that actually overall all firms were coming in at a minus 42 score. So remember, that's on a scale of plus 100 to minus 100, and that's a minus 42 score. But again, this is about the inquiry phase of the interaction that the researchers had with these firms. So it's not about the actual service that any customers would have received because they didn't go into that data. This is about the initial part. And some people might be going, well, oh, that's fine then, don't worry about that because it's only an initial bit, it doesn't make any difference. This is probably the most critical part of any interaction with your customers, particularly new customers, because as we know from last year and the year before, people are sat at home, they're online, they move quickly. If something isn't working quickly, efficiently, they move on. So a -42 score means that there's massive opportunity for the professional services sector as a whole to really improve and ensure that even if that person, that potential customer doesn't use you, that they would then go off and tell somebody else, well, give them a ring. I didn't use them, but actually the initial inquiry was really good. So there's loads of potential here. It's not about securing the business per se, it's about securing the business and getting referrals as well off the back of that. So -42 is interesting in terms of a number, loads of scope.
That's a great point, Rich. When you think about the experience many of us will have had, listeners and ourselves last year, when you were trying to contact your bank, trying to get through to your accountant, trying to ring a lawyer, you know, those businesses were in, you know, they got better as the year went on, but they were often, many of them using COVID as an excuse, often many of them not being set up in the right way to be able to deliver these inquiries. And I'd hate to think how much business they lost because they weren't handling these inquiries well or properly or as they should have been. So, you know, a -42 basically says to the professional services world, doesn't it, that actually I'm not going to recommend you because I can't even get through to you, is the initial point. The second point I want to make on the data is that if you look at the individual performances of those different sectors on Net Promoter, you had legal down at -54, you had accountancy at -47, you had the financial service industry at -32, and the property service industry at -30. So none of those sectors did particularly well, which is shocking, really, considering, you know, when consumers were looking for help and support at a really difficult time, lots of these businesses weren't available. However, that of course provides this year with a huge opportunity, which is, you know, for all of these businesses, and all these businesses have had these findings fed back to them. Some were gleefully involved, others we just put into the mix, didn't we, to see how they got on. And it's been really interesting in my conversations I've had with some of these businesses. Some of them are absolutely beside themselves that was the experience that our researchers had. Others knew, actually. Others were really honest and said, yeah, I'm not surprised. And often it's those businesses that kind of go, yes, so we want to work, we want to try and put this right. Yeah. So, Rich, how can this is a professional services survey, but you know, it's really interesting reading for any business, I think, that deals with consumers. So yeah, how can businesses get copies of this report? Because it's free, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like Christmas has come early. It was only just gone, but it has come early because we're providing this for everybody to gain insight via the link that will be appearing below me at this very moment. And we will also put it, if you're viewing this on LinkedIn as well, there will be a link there, and also on YouTube we'll provide the link on in the comments underneath there as well. So click on there, provide us with a small amount of information so we can send it to you, because otherwise we can't send it to you. So we do need a little bit of info. Of course, all that information will not be used in anything else. It would just be used to send you that report. So please do that, and then you will receive a virtual copy of this particular report. I don't know whether it's always a problem with a virtual background. It never works very well. I'm not even going to bother.
Put it back towards your chest, your manly chest.
Oh, there we go. Look, there we go. You'll get a virtual electronic copy of one of these marvelous brochures here. So yeah. And again, don't need to be within professional services if you want to find out what's going on. But if you are within the professional service sector, how do you think you might compare? You know, what did it actually show in the legal, accountancy, insurance and property sectors? What was actually going on in the financial sector? What were the key things? Because stuff did happen really well, actually. You know, there were engaging people. There were people who were asking great questions. There was speed in response. But unfortunately, not enough of the time to make a real difference to that initial inquiry. And the last thing I think that you'll find across there as well is the amount of follow-up as well. Now, how many times did organizations follow up was very, very low, and you'll be able to see that all in the report, which could wing its way to you if you follow that link.
The other thing is, if you're listening on podcast, you can get the report at insight6.com. So you can go there, click the link, and put your details in to get the report. So yeah, great start to 2022. Start your, our plea to you at Insight 6 is start your year with some great insights. Start your year with knowing what your customers and consumers are thinking, and start your year with some really sound strategy about how you're going to delight your clients and customers this year. If you do that, by the time you get to April, you'll be well on the way to having a record year, I'm sure. So there's a real opportunity, I think, and our plan certainly in these podcasts is to really try and help businesses keep the focus on the client. So if you keep the focus on the client, you won't go far wrong. Rich,
yeah, and it has been an absolute pleasure. 2022, we're going to have some exciting more guests on our podcast as well. So for now, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from him.